Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I would like to show you our zones feature, which is Datacake's own interpretation of having an asset tracking management solution on the Datacake workspaces. So in this demonstration, I'm going to use a tracking device from Digital Matter, Cellular connected to our platform, but the following examples and demos I'm going to show you are valid for all kinds of asset tracking devices, whether Cellular, LoRaWAN, Sigfox, or whatever kind of tracking devices you have. Okay, to get started, what you need is a device that records location data. As this you can see here on my Digital Matter Barra tracker. I was using it in my car a couple of days ago, and you can see the track recorded here. So in order to make use of the zones feature, what you need to do is in your template or in the device configuration, make sure that the location field that you're using to record the location has the role device location attached. If you want to know how to do that, if you don't have a role attached, please go into the field configuration and select the role device location. This also makes sure that, for example, in the fleet overview, you can use the map feature, and then you can see actually the location of the device being shown on the map. Now on the sidebar, you also find a new option, which is zones. And when we click on that, we can see, okay, there is no zones yet, but it gives us a KPI overview. And in this KPI overview, we can see some basic details like number of zones, how many devices are in zones, the most crowded zone, and the least crowded zones if you're working with multiple zones. The first thing that we need to do is add our first zone. First of all, click on the list tab above and in here you can find the similar concept of adding a new zone. You find a blue button called Add Zone, but also Import Zone. If you want to add a single zone, click on Add Zone. This will also focus on the last position recorded or on the general position of your fleet. And then you can go along and select the circle here to draw a circular geofence. I'm going to draw this around my hometown, and I've been setting this basically more or less to my location. I can call this now Simon's home zone or whatever name you prefer. And we can also give a description, my home zone, and then also a tag, like for example, home. You can add as many tags as you want, and you can use tags later on for separation, but also for running reports and alerts. I'm going to show you how this works in a few. Next, you click on Add Zone. The zone is now being added to your workspace. And if we go back onto the overview, we can also see that right now it also has already found out that the device that is located in this workspace, and even if it would be more devices, they will all show up here and determine if they are in zones or not. You can see this is the device. It hasn't moved within the last 24 hours, means that there's no zone change within the last 24 hours. And we can go on the actual zone by clicking on it and see, okay, there's one device in the zone. And the average time in that zone for this device is 26 seconds. That was when I created the zone, like 26 seconds ago. And for sure, new devices within the last 24 hours, which is based on the zone that I just created. We can also see zone on a map. We have an audit log. And in this audit log, this is now for zones specifically, a zone-specific audit log. You can see the events of the zone, if a device has entered the zone or left the zone. We can also do some configuration and also changing zones and the zone radius and things like that. If we go back into the overview, we also have a global audit log. And this means that you can see all of the trackers and events happening around your zones. We do have the map where you can see all of the kind of zones in your workspace, and you could create more and more zones and they would all appear in here. Next is alerts and notifications. You want for sure use the rule engine or zones to run some alerts on whether a device has entered or left a zone. And you can do this using our rule engine. In the new rule engine, you have the option to add a new rule. We access the rule engine by clicking on the sidebar and then adding our first rule. Now you can select a product. Right now there's only one product, but if there would be like hundreds of devices in that product, this rule would be valid for, so you need to just create one rule for all devices belonging to that product. Now a trigger. We have triggers for measurements, like if a device sends a temperature, but we also have new triggers now for zone entry, zone length of stay, and zone exit. Now we can click on zone entry. We could also click on zone exit, so we would create a general notification for both exit and entry events. And then basically, last but not least, we just need to select an action. And in this action, we have the options like always, email, webhook, SMS, and also downlinks. But I'm now going to pick the email. Next, put in the recipient, my own email address. And then basically in the editor, you can write your own email content. And then you also now have access to triggering zone, the name entered at and exited at, and the length of stay. For example, if you want to know how long it stays. So you would be now able to write something like your device and then triggering device name has changed zones, and then triggering zone, ID, name, entered at, exited at, length of stay, triggering zone name, and then exited at. And now you have a notification for a basic exit, but you can also enter it and then have the same for entered it. You would probably separate both entry and exit, but if you want to combine everything into a status update email, you can use our designer. You can add this action and the rule has been created. And now we call this like entered exit rule, zones rule. Save this rule, and now this is active. That means if there is a change, so if the device sends a new position and this is outside or inside the zone, this zone gets triggered. And basically also this zone then sends you an email. This rule sends you an email with all the informations. Now going back to the rule once more, you could see that we also have a filter by tags. And this is where tags come into place. Right now, this rule is active for all zones that you would add to the workspace that are added right now or that you would add in the future. And you can use our tag feature to filter the triggering zones. And this means you could, for example, select or create different kind of rules for groups of zones and then send emails for different kind of persons or responsibilities. And basically use the triggers, the tags for filtering those zones. Last but not least, if you go back to the device overview, the last elements, the usual elements such as the dashboard designer and recording of historical data remain. And as you all know, we also have a mobile editor, which gives you the option to create a mobile dashboard independently from the main dashboard. And this dashboard is also available on our zones feature. So if you go into the zones feature once more, and then you go into the list, select a single zone or go into the map, you can click on the actual device and then you see the preview, and then you can access the mobile dashboard by clicking on the sidebar. Let's have a look how this works with a little bit more scale. I just switched into a demonstration workspace where we track the position of public transport buses in a nearby city. If we go into zones, we can see we have a couple of more zones. And now we go into the audit log. We can see all the events happening, that buses are exiting or entering zones. We can also see the timestamp, which gives you the option to calculate the length of stay. And if you then go onto the map, you can see basically all of the buses and zones going around. You can click on one of those zones. You can see, okay, there's no device in it. And here you can see there's a couple of devices. Go into the detail of a single zone and see all of the devices, how long they stayed, how many new devices within the last 24 hours, and things like that, and also the audit log. And this makes sure that you can more or less create a basic asset tracking management system on top of your Datacake workspaces. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to write them here wherever you see the video. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.